Welcome to another episode of my podcast That's Fine With Me. Today we're going to be talking about shame and the culture of shame. It is extremely popular in Asian countries such as Korea, Japan, China, and even immigrants coming from these countries to United States or any other European countries. They face similar issues in the community. They have Asian community that they're still dependent on. And when I was looking for some information, doing my research, I couldn't find anything relatable or anything that could probably give some proofs or maybe history behind this shame culture that we see everywhere. And I try to get some pieces, one information and the other, and find, are there any benefits of this culture? What is the difference between European and other countries? And I'm not going to be talking about specific countries. I'm talking about the ideology of countries. I'm going to give you some examples, what really happened and what was the main reason behind this. A couple of months ago, there was a news about K-pop celebrity that was a participant in a group who was filming secretly girls that he was having sex with, and then he was posting this in a group chat without their consent. Of course, I don't know why, but it leaked somehow later on. And a lot of these girls, they don't really want to be public. They don't want to participate in the scandal. And for a long period of time, there is a big problem in Asian countries when a lot of gangs or a lot of people that providing services of prostitutes and human traffic, they can easily go away with this factor because first and foremost, they have some people in departments, police departments, in political field. But at the same time, there's a problem with this shame culture. A lot of the girls that are filmed or probably sold to rich people, they are quiet for one of the main reasons because they're scared of being shamed in their society and in their community. That is the main reason why I got these examples to show you that sometimes the root of the problem is not always about some crimes that we see everywhere. It's about the rooted conception in the mind of a person that if I tell something to a police or if I share some problem and some crime that happened to me or some other person, then they're going to shame me for being that way. And one of the great examples I found through internet when a psychologist, he got a client who had gambling problems and who had problems with prostitutes, with sex addictions, and many, many more. There was piling, and when his wife found out about his addictions, of course, she left him. And for a long period of time, he couldn't tell and bring himself to tell his parents that he had this type of addictions because he wasn't a Native American. He came with his parents when like in the 70s or 80s, and he's an immigrant in a way, but he grew up in the United States. That is the main reason why he was still really tied to a Korean community, but at the same time, he grew up as an American. While he had this addiction problems and while he was telling his parents, his mom was screaming and telling him that it's not the way we were raising you, and dad was quiet. For a long period of time, as the client was growing up, he had to face three main points: that love was conditional. It wasn't an unconditional love. It's a conditional love. He lived in shame and he lived in secret. A lot of immigrants that came from Korea in 70s and 80s, they didn't have legal status. That's why they had to be in secret. And observing this as a child, secretiveness and shameful behavior, community status and importance of community, Asian community basically, that shape him in the way that if he had any problems and any addictions or anything or like a secret life, it was normal to have a secret life and not asking for help. That is the main reason why he went and had a session with a doctor, psychologist. Psychologist said that it was really hard to get to his mind that it's okay to share some problems, and the loved ones, they actually have to support you through this journey. There is a difference between psychology and mindset in different countries. A lot of European and United States, I guess, countries, they have a vision of guilt. Guilt, when you break a law, if you break the rules, you feel guilty, and then you just feel this guilt that it's not correct, it is not okay to do so. Then opposed to Asian countries where you have honor, shame, strategy and mindset, you think, okay, I don't have family, my job is not extremely prestigious, I don't have education, and people would shame you for some basic things that you do not achieve in this society. And if you have a little bit different version of what you want to become in the future, but your parents disagree with you, they try to shame you in telling like you have to follow the path, you have to listen to your relatives. The importance of their parents is extreme, and especially grandparents. Whenever you see the Squid Game, let's just have this example as a Squid Game. Do you remember Song Ki-hoon, the main protagonist, he was always constantly shamed by his mom and his neighbor and a lot of their neighbors when they were telling like, you're gambling, you're unemployed, you have a lot of debts, and your family, you went through divorce. This is a policy of shame, but still he couldn't keep himself from not doing these crimes and not getting money, not living this secret life. It was a way to get away from this feeling of constant judgment from his own neighbors. And to the opposite side of the same, I guess, person, his neighbor, his childhood friend, who was, I don't remember his name. I'm so sorry, guys. I don't remember. But the guy that was in the first season and he was his childhood friend and they had a fight and Song Ki-hoon, he won the prize. He was a very successful businessman, and mom was extremely proud of him because he had business, he had money, education, everything, like the whole package was there. And of course, she was bragging about her son, which is normal for, I guess, every single culture. But in Korean culture, like, look at my son, he has the standard achievements that were kind of like well appreciated in the society, in the Korean society. And when Song Ki-hoon saw his childhood friend among the others who had dads, he realized that because of the shame that he felt toward his mom, he couldn't bring himself to tell her that, Mom, I'm a failure, I lost all the money, I lost my business, which is sometimes extremely hard to tell. I totally get it. But at the same time, you need support of your parents. Maybe your parents, they could have maybe helped you, or you would have felt so much better telling someone instead of going through this alone. Because you remember in the first season when the game was over, he tried to kill himself. That is the weight of judgment and shameful culture that is super popular in Asia, and specifically Korea. I would say in so many different episodes that I watched, there's a whole movement in Korea right now. It's called 4B, where people, women basically, feminists, they are fighting for women's rights. China and Korea, they're extremely patriarchal countries where men have more power over women. And not only over women, but just in general, they have more power. These women, they stand for a rule: no sex, no dating, no marriage, and no childbirth. This is a strong point where they try to say that without us, without women, there's no society. And we talked about misogyny and femicide in China that wasn't that far away, and it's still fresh in minds and it's in history, that for some period of time, women in China, they had no rights to give birth. They had to go through abortions. They had to pay fines for giving birth. And if there was a girl in the picture, then most of the families, they had to get an abortion. And preferably, there were men that see the light. Unfortunately, right now, because of this policy, a lot of Chinese villages, they are left with no women, and that's why human trafficking is extremely harsh topic in China. This is a whole agenda, but we're not going to be talking about this today. I talked about this in my previous podcasts. What I'm saying is, in the countries with women being nobodies in their minds, it's important to understand that shame is rooted in the mindset of people. That is the main reason why a lot of the times when women, they're suffering from abuse or they're suffering from human traffic and prostitution and sex tapes that were filmed without their consent, it is always important to remember that these women, they have not other choice but give up this idea and make sure that it's going to go away quietly. Because if they bring this up, they're going to be in the spotlight and they're going to be judged for what they've done and how they had sex with someone who's not a man of, like, who's they're dating or husband. But let's compare both of models. I mean, United States, for example, or Kim Kardashian, she filmed her famous sex tape, and then we can see this K-pop scandal that happened not so long ago. Kim Kardashian, yeah, she was in a way shamed for whatever she had done, but got her popularity and she got her famous, I guess, breakthrough with the help of the sex tape. If we're going to be talking about K-pop, this is the end of your career. This is the end of your, I guess, peaceful life. And with a fine, you still can't get away from the shame that you're going to get from your own citizens or from your people of your country. The guy who accepted every single allegation was against him, he quit his label and now he left his K-pop group, which is pretty obvious. And I would say it is important to understand it's not going to happen with every single person from Asia. And maybe this shame culture is changing slightly in the way that people are not going to be that kind of dramatic. In my opinion, the episode of Black Mirror was taken from Asian culture, shameful culture. Do you remember when one of the actors, she was having some ranks? She was ranking other people for smiling, for not smiling. And if you had 1 star or maybe 2 star rating, then you are sociopath. But sometimes you just don't want to do something that the others expect you to do. And if someone gives you a review or gives you a rating, then maybe it's a subjective opinion which you're going to be a slave of in the future. That is the main reason I think it was from Asian culture taken and shown us that we don't have to get this quite literally and shame people for whatever they do in their life. Another great, I guess, example, I watched one of the girls. She is from China and she's talking about her culture. She's talking about people in China. And she says that, it's really common for Chinese to have double life, to cheat on their partners. Most of the times it's going to be men. And it's super shameful to date other person while you're married, and no one is talking about that. If in other countries people are bragging about their kind of private life and bragging about second family, not always, but sometimes. So in China or any Asian country, it's prohibited, but they're still doing this. The problem with shaming or guilt is always the same. Whenever you feel that something is not allowed, you want to get access to it. And it's not only in Asian countries, it's everywhere. When you have a lot, of course, I'm not saying something about murders and maybe breaking some laws, but when you don't get access to something that you really want to have, you're going to have a secret life or you're going to have a little bit different standards. That is the main reason why Chinese, they are going to date a girl and they might even have sex with her during the first or second or even third date. And then they're not going to marry this girl ever. Most of the time, they're not going to marry this girl, 95%. And they're going to find someone else who is pure or at least didn't have sex with him or her first date. But mainly it is related to her. So if this girl is pure, they're going to get married. And sometimes a lot of families, they're dictating the rules in China. And if a guy who's probably 25 and he's still married, family is super concerned. And they're going to tell you that you need to get married in the way that you are forced to find a partner. And when they're looking for a partner in this state, I guess, they're not capable of looking for someone they love. They just need someone to procreate with and to live with. And that's why they start cheating later on, because they don't really love this partner. The family was shaming them for not having a partner, wife, or husband, not having a kid. And a lot of couples, they end up in a relationship, unhappy relationship, because they were forced to find a husband or a wife, their spouse. That is the main reason why it is extremely dangerous culture. I mean, in Russia, I can talk from my point of view. We do have a lot of people saying like, oh, you're still not married. Oh, you're still not having a kid. You're over 30. Is there a problem with you? There are still certain people that can tell you, but it's an older generation. If we're going to be talking about someone my age, maybe around 30, less than 30, 35, they're not going to talk about that. It's not their concern any longer. So the mindset is shifting because, I guess, of United States, Sex and the City, and a lot of cultural booms that we saw over internet, being kids and seeing that maybe it's not the end of the world if you are not going to get married around 20, 25, which was a necessity in 90s and 80s and way back to, I guess, 20th and 19th century. That is the main reason why I'd say you have to keep in mind that whenever you're talking to different culture and different, I guess, representative of a different country, you have to understand there's always going to be a difference in their mindset. That's why you can't judge them by your rules and saying, but it's so easy. Just why don't you want to say that, yeah, I had sex with this guy and he's not going to have anything on you? And in Korea, it's not going to work this way. They're afraid of being shamed for whatever they've done. The same happens in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and this type of countries. They're extremely afraid of their relatives and, of course, of their grandparents, of their parents. And that's why whenever they come to other countries and cities and they got their freedom, they are acting like crazy people because they finally understand that they broke free from this influence of their relatives, and now they can do whatever they want in a country that is free from those rules. But shame culture is not always that bad. So the benefits of this country is that sometimes it's going to shape person in a way that he's not going to be disrespectful. He's going to respect his roots. He's going to respect his parents and family, and others because he's afraid that everyone is going to know that he's an asshole, basically. That is the main reason why the benefit of this culture when they're shaming you is, yeah, if we can find any kind of benefit, is that it's shaping you in the way that you're afraid to be bad. And sometimes people, they need to know that it's not okay to be bad. Quick example, right now we have a small war with my neighbors because they are extremely noisy. Unfortunately, in Russian Federation, some laws, they're not working. You can call the police, they're gonna come, say something like, oh, don't do that, and then go away. Or they're gonna get you a fine for, I guess, $5, and that's it. Of course, these neighbors, they don't wanna listen to you because they wanna have fun. They wanna listen to music, super loud. They wanna ride their bikes that are illegal bikes. And there's nothing you can do about this. If we had this shame culture, if we had this access to be, have these tools of shaming people, maybe they would have thought that it's not okay to be jerks and to listen to music that loud or use these bikes because I'm going to be shamed for that. In the Soviet Union, I guess in 20th century, around that time, that was super popular. You were shamed for whatever you wanted to do. But it's not always right, especially when people wanted to get through a divorce. They were put in a newspaper and they were meant to go to work and listen from their bosses that it's not okay to get through a divorce. And then some community or, I don't know, law system would determine if you're allowed to have a divorce, if you were not allowed to have a divorce. Sometimes people couldn't get a divorce because they were heavily criticized for this decision, and sometimes they even were fired from work. This is a culture of fame, which actually faded away through years, and right now there's nothing such as, shame culture. And I'd say finally we got rid of this, I guess, problem. But it worked in some cases when you had neighbors that were not nice, and this way it could have worked on them. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think that shame honor culture is okay? Or if it's not okay, and maybe you should keep in mind that you have to live in a society where you're not judging someone and you're not going to be judged in return. Let me know your thoughts. You can leave them in That's Fine With Me podcast, gmail.com. And I'm going to share it with others on my YouTube channel. I love you all, guys, so much. And I'm going to see you next time. Bye-bye.